are some names I'm not familiar with, so I am very honored to meet you tonight, unfortunately virtually, which isn't the same. I'm currently president. I've been president in the past, and I just wanted to let you all know that we appreciate so much that you're here tonight. I'm very excited to hear our guest speakers. This is something that aligns with the work that we're doing, especially with our family members and supporting and educating them. And then but there were a couple of things I wanted to mention. One is that we will be trying much harder to find our memberships. And I'm hoping that any of you who are especially out in East Alameda County will consider getting to know us, know what we're doing, why we're here. We are a very steadfast group, and we never give up. And we know we have a lot to do to help improve quality of life for everyone. Let's see, and I have this meeting. Okay, got it. All right, sorry, I had to clear out my window here. So we're hoping that you will consider being a member of NAMI Tri-Valley. Then you have a little bit of ownership and a lot of say. You have a lot of say anyway, and I for one would love to hear whatever you have on your mind. The other, and Armine, I'm going to cross into your territory because I'm going to show our next month, just to do it right now, share
Already planned.
Our next month's meeting. It's just taking us a little bit of time so we can get our presentation general meetings up and rolling for 2022. Next month, we will have Beverly, Bergman, and Francesca Tenenbaum of the Mental Health Association of Alameda County. And Beverly is a family caregiver advocacy specialist. I call her a family advocate. Either way, it's a badge of honor. Francesca Tenenbaum is the Patients' Rights Director for Alameda, Marin, and San Mateo counties. And she also is let's see, director of the grievance program, which is something new. So we will be sending this out. If we have an email address, even better, if you become a member of NAMI Tri-Valley, I promise you will get Zoom links that have no problems. Okay, I can't promise that. I will try, but we will send you, we will definitely send you everything that's going on here, and we've got lots. So thank you for taking a minute to listen to what I had to say. Lois, is Kim from the Valley Wellness Center here? Do we have Kim?
I don't see Kim, so I think we're gonna get going with our.
We're gonna have to move on, yeah.
Yes.
I do want to just mention that the Valley Wellness Center, that's Bay Area Community Services, or BACS, is open. And many people don't realize that they are. So that was having the supervisor from the Valley Wellness Center come let us know. But I'll just cut to the chase here. Okay, Armine.
Okay. Thank you, Marcia. Thank you, Marcia. And as I promised both Katy and Alison, we're not going to get too much time up front, but let me tell you, you're all in for a treat, because these two ladies, and I will not say much about them because we're going to hear about them from them, but I have the honor of getting to know them through this last year, and I'm blown away. You know, our loved ones go through a lot of difficult times, and if we don't have support, we couldn't go through this. We're all here giving the best we can, but these both women are strong, committed, dedicated. I could not just say enough good words. You're going to hear them, and then at the end, we'll come back full circle, and then you'll see. Put your seatbelts on. You're going to hear a lot. You're going to learn a lot, and we'll come back and then appreciate them at the end. So without further ado, I'm going to turn the floor to Katy Polony first, and then she will pass the floor to Alison Monroe.
Central America's.
Okay, thank you. And first, I want to say I'm not a pothead, but I do like to vape a little tiny bit of nicotine, especially during meetings when I'm nervous. So just a disclaimer. And I am nervous, even though I know I'm among friends. And thank you so much for what you said, Armine. And thank you for having us. I do love to talk, but I'm scared at the same time. I'm going to try to keep this to between 15 and 20 minutes. When it hits 15, if somebody could just let me know so I know to like wrap it up. My name is Katy, and I'm going to divide up what I say into 3 parts. I'm going to start with my own personal story, which I have not told for a while. So it's interesting to think about it. Then I'm going to try to give a history of FASMI, where we came from, what we're doing, and what we would like to do. And then I'm going to finish with talking about my experiences as a provider in the behavioral health system. I'm a family advocate with an IHOT team. So to start off, I have a son who is 35 and has pretty classic schizophrenia. I think I began noticing changes with him when he was at school. He was in college, and around the age of 20, he started to say things that just didn't seem quite right. But he did well in school. He graduated. He got a place of his own. He worked. He pursued his interests, which were writing and piano. So even though I saw this sort of prodromal period of schizophrenia increasing, I now know it's prodromal. It can go on for years before it becomes full. I tried not to worry. Then when he was 26, it became so severe, he had to move back in with me. He was just moving from one house to another and afraid and anxious. And so I said, just come home. And I didn't know, but he was also developing delusions at that time, which were pretty shocking when he told me about them when the voices came, which was at the age of 29. And he was scared. And within 2 weeks, he made a serious attempt to kill himself with a butcher knife and his wrist, and ended up in John George for the first time on the wait list for Villa. And for 5 weeks, he waited to go to Villa. And at the end of 5 weeks, he caught on that, oh, I can go before a judge and get myself sprung from here if I present well enough. And that's what he did. He won a writ hearing. And since then, that's been his mode of operandi. Go off medication, get hospitalized, win a writ hearing, go back out. And what that has served to do, and every time he's been hospitalized, he's been put on the wait list for Villa, because my son is really ill. He just can present well. So basically, the whole issue of civil liberties and the rights of our loved ones to hurt themselves is what has ended up slowly, I have to say, it looks like killing my son. And although now he has been in Herrick Hospital for almost 6 months now, which is a long story, and because he made serious threats to kill me. I don't know how serious, they were frightening threats to kill me. And he's been in Herrick, and I don't know if I'm going to I will take him home again. I mean, I know that because the options for housing are not pleasant. And I feel better with it, but I'm scared to do it because if he goes off his medications yet again, it is really not good. So that's my personal story with my son. FASMI. Okay, when I first came into the system, when my son was first hospitalized and taken to John George after the suicide attempt, I realized quickly that we didn't have enough beds to give them the treatment they needed. My son waited 5 weeks for a bed to open up at Villa Fairmont. And I found out during that time that the county had just closed a few beds at Villa. And that was why there was this backlog in John George for people getting into Villa. which is even worse today, or it persists today. I'm not sure how long it is right now, because they so rarely put anybody on the wait list for Villa. So I'm looking around, I'm asking people, who's active around here? Who's trying to change this? And everybody pointed me towards Patricia Fontana-Norell and Candy DeWitt, who had been fighting to get AOT in the county for years. And I met up with them just as they succeeded. And that's why we have AOT and IHOT in the county, is because of Patricia and Candy and others that they worked with, but it was mainly their efforts. Up against a lot of peer organized resistance to it. Now the county says, great, we have AOT and IHOP, but at that time, nobody wanted it.
Excuse me, could you explain to our audience what AOT means?
Oh, sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, sorry. AOT is assisted outpatient treatment, and it is basically the highest level of case management you can get in the county. It's court ordered, so that you don't have an option to be in it, but doesn't mean you have to do anything. You are still free to not take medication, to not go into housing if you don't want to. It cannot make you do anything. But because there is a judge involved, and because they can spend more time meeting with people than most case management teams, any case management teams, it tends to be more effective. So we're always pleased when we get somebody into AOT. So I got involved with them just as they were winding down and they were exhausted. So the organization they had, called Voices of the Mothers, was disbanding. But there I met Alison and Diane and Gloria and Sue. And this little handful of us didn't want to let go. We'd just gotten there and we were upset with the way the system was. So we stayed together and met regularly at a Hofbrau in San Leandro every 2 or 3 weeks, and just basically tried to educate ourselves, orient ourselves. And it's not easy. This system is so difficult to understand. I mean, I'm amazed that I understand it to the extent that I do, to understand who's in charge of what and what their powers are and what exists out there in terms of treatment. It's like a labyrinth. But that's what we tried to do, is try to understand what we were working with. And some of us, Alison is one of them, could spend a lot of time going to mental health advisory boards, just trying to acquaint ourselves with what was going on. We knew right off the top, we wanted another Villa Fairmont, and we wanted more supportive licensed board and cares. We wanted more supportive housing. Those were the two things. It was just staring us in the face. We began to go to the family dialogue, or we were always going to family dialogue meetings, which are hosted by the Office of Family Empowerment in the behavioral health system and run by Rosa. And we would go to these meetings. And at that time, there were members of the county that were like in the higher levels, like James Wagner and Kate Jones. And I think once or twice, whoever was the head of behavioral health would show up. And we just basically were hammering them. We need beds, we need beds, we need more hospital beds. And they would always say, no, 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 you're not going to get them. And one of the reasons they gave was that there were going to be these lawsuits that the county was going to be confronting. And we didn't know what they were talking about at the time, but we kept saying beds, 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 until finally one meeting, James Wagner said, you know, we're just a bunch of middle-aged bureaucrats doing the best we can. You need to get a bunch of people together and go to the Board of Supervisors. And a light went off in my head. You know, he's right. We're not going to get anywhere by hammering on these poor people. We've got to build a movement that can actually affect change. And that's what we've been trying to do ever since. So at that point, I think it was around that time, two things happened. One, we got we became aware of something called Decarcerate Alameda County, which was a coalition of people that were fighting to keep the county from giving money to Santa Rita, to the sheriff, to build the mental health system in Santa Rita. And they were doing this because there were two lawsuits at that time that had hit the county, the main one being the Babu lawsuit, and the secondary one being Disability Rights of California. And then third, a report came down later from the Department of Justice, all of them saying the treatment of people with mental illness. Did somebody say something? Okay.
No.
All of them were saying that the treatment of people in Santa Rita was hellish and had to be changed. They were violating people's rights with their treatment in Santa Rita. And let me just point out here, a third of the people in Santa Rita have serious mental illness. Half of them are Black and people of color. There is an inbred discrimination in our treatment of people with serious mental illness based on our whole society, basically. So DAC was trying to fight this and say, no, we want that money spent before people end up incarcerated. We want, at that time they were calling for community services. So Alison gets involved with DAC and she begins talking about the need for hospital beds. And that's not something that people were accustomed to hearing. It was all community services and nothing more. So this sort of brought in the issue of the need for hospitalization into this arena that normally would not even think about it. And it was also there that we met Lonnie Hancock, who actually happens to be here. I was going to speak about her because she was significant to FASMI. At the same time that we're becoming involved with DAC, we create an alliance with Lee Davis, who runs the Mental Health Advisory Board. And she suggested that we present to the Mental Health Advisory Board the family position and what we want, which we did, and it went well. And this was in November 2019. And people, on the basis of that, we realized, God, people really want to hear our stories. We actually can have an effect by telling people our stories, because not many people hear what folks with serious mental illness go through because they can't speak for themselves generally. So we decided after that that we were going to try to do something on a bigger scale and go public, and then COVID hit. So we went on Zoom and we began to invite people to speak. One of the two of the first people we had come was Lauren and Teresa from Contra Costa, who were very well versed in the issue of housing. And that drew quite a few people to a FASMI meeting. And then Lonnie came, because Lonnie saw, hey, we can use this family voice to actually be more effective in getting the care we need before people end up going to jail, because she was involved with DAC. And so she came to one of our meetings and taught us about the importance of advocacy, and not just an advocacy on a political scale where you're targeting people with power and the money to listen to what you have to say and to try to affect change that way. And more people came to FASMI because that was pretty interesting stuff. So, excuse me, let me just look here for a second. So basically, FASMI's mission statement what we're trying to do is we want more hospital beds, another Villa Fairmont primarily, more supportive housing of a higher caliber than what we now have, and a continuum of care so that people don't leave one piece of treatment and then get lost before they move to the next. But we don't just want any hospital or any housing situation or any case management team. We want quality. There are hospitals being built in the state and around the country, psychiatric hospitals that look beautiful. They're designed to maximize comfort, both for the people there and the people coming to visit. They're just pleasant places to be. And we have a hunch that our loved ones, if they actually were taken to hospitals like that, would have a less traumatic reaction than the way it is now. So hang on one second. So yeah, so then we held a retreat where we tried to flesh this stuff out. And then more recently, the last thing we've done is held a protest in front of the Board of Supervisors. And the reason for this protest is that there is money coming from the state. Gavin Newsom is Alison's going to get into this more later, is allocating a lot of money, billions of dollars, to build both infrastructure, mental health infrastructure, which can include hospitals, and housing. And there seemed to be some dragging of the feet going on to go after this money. And we wanted to push the Board of Supervisors to push behavioral health to go after this money. So we held a protest. We slept out. Some of us slept out in front of the Board of Supervisors for 2 or 3 days. And we got press and we got turnout. And it was just this wonderful, almost joyous, tearful, joyous experience for us. And we've come out of that feeling more energized. And I think what we're trying to do now, where FASMI is at right now, is which again, Alison's going to speak to, concentrating on advocating for this money and getting things built and having some role in that building of these things and the decisions being made. And the other thing, and this is more like something I'm personally am really keyed in on, is I think we have to outreach more than we do. We're primarily, but not entirely, old white women. And that is not representative of the people suffering from serious mental illness. And unless we can become an organization that represents the families that deal with people with serious mental illness, I don't think we're going to be nearly as successful as we might be, nearly as impactful. So I really want to outreach, concentrate on trying to outreach to the communities that are not as well represented. And that absolutely includes the immigrant communities. So that's what I want to say about FASMI. You're all welcome to, find out more about FASMI, check out a meeting. And now I want to talk, am I going on too long? I guess not. I'm okay. Okay. I want to talk for a couple of minutes about the work I do in IHOT, because everything I do in IHOT just underscores what I believe to be needed and the work we do in FASMI. I come out of my workday thinking to myself, we need more treatment beds. We need, just all the things that we're fighting for. It's just every day. And it's almost like carrying around this anger. I just feel so angry at what our kids have to go through and the effort that has to be made and the pain of the families. I'm furious. And what I find is that FASMI actually helps me relieve that anger. So it's healthy for me personally. The main thing I see wrong right off the top with our county's approach to behavioral health is it's a fail up system. In other words, you're expected to get worse before you get a little more of the treatment that was needed at the outset. Families will call for help and hear, oh, nope, don't meet criteria, needs to get worse. And they're going, what do you mean? They were just threatening to kill me. They talked about killing themselves. I can't feed them. They're not eating. They're defecating in their room. How much worse do you want them to get? That's one problem. the other problem is when you call for a 5150, it is getting harder and harder and harder to get one. And when I've talked with the police, they acknowledge that they are practicing what they call de-escalation, meaning they want to back away from any situation that might become confrontational. And so if I can't tell you how many times I've called for the police or the crisis team to come to a home, and the loved one has just walked into their bedroom and closed the door. That's it. End of story. Doesn't matter what they did 10 minutes before. They walked into their bedroom and closed the door, and nobody is going to open that door to go after them. Even the family is told. They say, well, we can open the door and then you can go in. They say, no, that's going to escalate the situation. And then the police say to them, what you need to do is leave, because obviously you're not safe. And this was told to me just a few months ago. You're not safe in your home. You need to leave because we're not opening that door, and get a restraining order. With that restraining order, we will then come back and open that door and take your child and either put them on the street if they're agreeable to just go to the street, or take them to jail. In either way, you have put your child into a far more vulnerable position. They're vulnerable to methamphetamines at that point in ways that they may not have been previously. I've seen moms that have had to do this and their child has gone, just run with the drugs and they're gone. And that's another problem with our system. Once somebody has become truly dual diagnosis, the tendency is not to give them treatment because it's a waste. It's harder, once they've gone down that rabbit hole, it's harder to pull them out. And so the county, with its limited resources, appears to just go, well, it's too late now. And I mean, there's always exceptions to what I'm saying. So you know what? That is the main gist of what I wanted to say. I know that's an odd way to end, like boom. But I'm more than happy to answer any questions that you might have. And you can disagree with me too, please.
So if there's no urgent question, and if you have anything right now, feel free. And at the end, we'll come back again. So our goal is to make sure we have some discussion, maybe at the end. And also feel free to add your questions in the chat. We'll revisit them. So this way we can go through just listening content and then come back for Q&A. But
I mean, there was one. Can I add one more thing I forgot that I do want to say? And that is that it's easy to get angry at the people who work in the system. It's easy to get angry at John George and the case manager who hasn't shown up for a month. Let me just say, the people, and there's exceptions. There's people that are burnt out and should just leave, probably. But most of the people who work in the system work really hard and care about the people they're working with. It's difficult to keep people working in this system. There is a shortage all the time of staff because the work is so difficult and so frustrating and can be disheartening. And that's all I want to say.
Thank you, Katie. Thank you. Thank you for sharing your information. We'll come back full circle then. So let's turn to Alison. Alison, you're muted unless there's any questions. No? So generally, if you want to say something, raise your hand so we can see it. I guess those of you who don't have the video, just put something in the chat. We'll try to watch or signals. But Alison, please go ahead.
I'm going to tell my story first, and maybe I'll let you ask questions about that if you want. And then I have a few slides about the politics of mental illness. But I need to try and tell my story again because I've gotten away from a lot of the anger and disgust and fear and fright that's been going on for 8 years. And coming back to it, I need to talk about it again. My girl Diana is not my biological child. She was my son's girlfriend. It's of course a long story, but I brought her here from Russia. Her parents said, to do that, I have to become her guardian. Actually, her dad said that, her mother's dead. And so I became her guardian and she lived with us. She's 27 now. And she has what's often diagnosed as schizoaffective, and she's a meth user. And in high school, she was very gifted and talented and bright, bilingual, wrote well in English. She made a dress with a fitted bodice without a pattern, just grabbed some material, cut it up and sewed it. She did all kinds of creative things, applied for jobs, internships. I had trouble getting her to school. She would sleep all day. Sometimes she would just sit or lie and stare and not move, different things like that. But I did not know what it signified. Now, her biological brother also lived with us for a while. And he had a schizophrenic break, as it turned out, the year before she did. He's been to John George once that I know of. He was homeless for a while and now he's living with us. He's been living with me for a couple of years. And I had exactly one clue then when she was 17 or so that she might have schizophrenia, because I picked up a pamphlet from an agency that was trying to intervene in early psychosis, in teenagers. And it had, do you have these symptoms? Do you smell strange things? Do things taste strange? Do you hear people talking about you? Do you see people and think they're talking about you? And she read it. I was going to give it to her brother, but she read it herself and she said, this is me. But I didn't know what to do with that information. I was taking her to a therapist at West Coast Children's Clinic, and they eventually diagnosed her with PTSD before she had her break. And when she did fall apart, it was pretty sudden. It was around Thanksgiving when she was 18. She started talking about her friends from high school, and she was saying they were all her boyfriends, and also that they were rapists. And she didn't know whether to go over their houses for Thanksgiving. And she told me different versions of this, which I just didn't make any sense. And then Christmas Eve, she ran away and pretty much disappeared. She was in homeless shelters for a while, and she turned up in a group home in Contra Costa County. And I had one of these experiences that I've had over and over. I think she's lost, and then she pops up again. I found her again, but she found me. She was at Cali House in Contra Costa County, and they got her on Geodon. And she was riding a bus to go to community college, and she was taking meth. And I had a couple of weeks to get used to this. She still had a lot of delusions. I don't think Geodon was ever that good for her. In fact, she called the police on me for different things that weren't really real. And then I came to Cali House and they just gave me her stuff in a big trash bag. This has happened a lot over the years too. She's thrown out, here's her stuff. She hit somebody at Cali House because she thought they were disrespecting her or stealing her stuff or something of that nature. And she was gone again. And then for the next 8 years, except for a couple periods when she was supposed to be in a board and care, she's been in either locked facilities or homeless. She's been in John George PES probably dozens of times. I can't keep count because nobody will show me her records anymore, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was 20 or so. She's been in the units in John George many times. She's been in Villa Fairmont 6 times. She just got into Villa Fairmont again and she had to wait 4 weeks. And I know other people are waiting to get into Villa as we speak. She's been in Gladman. She's been in Herrick Hospital several times. She's been in the PES in Contra Costa County. She's been in Santa Rita more than once. She's been in Bonita House twice, AWOL both times, once after a few days, once after a few weeks. She's been in Woodrow Place twice. Again, she threw something at somebody because of a delusion and lost her spot. She was in J. Mahler for several months. I didn't know that was possible, but she stayed there. It was pretty supportive for several months, and then she went out and took meth. She's been at 2 of Synergy's 5 campuses. Synergy is a board and care with services. They have campuses in Sacramento, Morgan Hill, and Greenfield. She stuck for 5 weeks at the one Synergy, and the other one, I think she got into some meth within a day or two of getting there. And she went AWOL. She's been in 2 board and cares. One years ago, she didn't even stay there the first night. She hitchhiked to Santa Cruz instead of going in the board and care. And she stayed all together there a couple nights. Most recently, she's been supposed to be in a board and care. This has been going on for 4.5 months now. She's been in locked facilities now for about a month, but before that, for 4.5 months, she was going in and out of a board and care in Hayward. I don't know how many of you are familiar with board and cares. It was a nice board and care, the nice house, it's clean, food is good, the kids that run it are nice, but there's nothing to do there. And she had a lot of delusions about what it was or it was supposed to be. She thought she would have an apartment with no roommates. And she ended up spending about 1 day out of 5 there. She would go out and take meth, be picked up in like the city or in Contra Costa County or some other place, be taken to a hospital, and then come back. Someone would bring her back home. She would stay there for a couple of days and take off again. This happened maybe 6 or 7 times, and they finally put a stop to it. But what was strange about this last episode was that she was conserved. She's on a permanent LPS conservatorship. And they still basically let her be homeless and take meth, except that she had a place to go and eat and take a shower if she wanted to. Anyway, that's over for the moment, and she's at Villa. I'm not able to find out what's going on with her at Villa. What meds are going to try next. She's had ECT. She's been on Clozaril a couple times, clozapine. I thought it was good for her, but she says it makes her sleepy and stupid. She doesn't like it. Also, I think people are reluctant to prescribe it. It's a lot of work to keep someone taking clozapine. You need the blood tests. You need to basically not have them roam the countryside and go all over the place. You need to have them around so they do not drop off in their dosage suddenly. I've seen if she quits taking Clozaril suddenly, she might hit people. That's happened before. But as I say, I have no idea what's going on with her meds or what they're going to try next. She's also had ECT at Villa, electroshock therapy, which I'm not aware that it helped. You know, I wasn't opposed to it. It sounds like it's much less scary than it used to be. And anything that would put a lid on these delusions would be worth trying, because it's not safe for her to let her go out and be homeless and take meth. Even if she wants to do that, it's not an option. She doesn't understand that meth is bad for her. She has many delusions about meth at different times. Sometimes she'll say she needs it to stay alive. Sometimes she'll say she needs it to keep her unborn baby alive. I don't know about your relatives, but Diana often thinks she has imaginary family members. She'll say that she's doing a government research project on meth, or she's working for the FBI investigating meth users, or she's involved in processing meth or creating drugs, designer drugs. She can't think clearly about meth. You know, a couple of years ago, she would say, oh, I'm going to be sober. I'm going to try to stay sober. It's important to be sober. And that would work for a while. But I don't know if it'll happen again, because she's saying right now that she's going to use meth recreationally. You know, she can just do drugs when she feels like it. She just won't take too much. It's sad. I don't know what's going to happen to her, and it could happen really soon. I don't know how long they're going to keep her in Villa. And I try not to think about it a lot of the time. And it took me a couple of years, this has been going on for 8 years, to understand what was going on. First, there was this stuff about meth a couple of years after she started being homeless and running around. That was when she told me that she needed meth because she was pregnant and her baby needed it. And she told that also to a social worker. And I said, well, they got to understand this. This is just not okay. You know, it's whether or not they have room in Villa, whether or not she wants to be in Villa, whether or not she wants to take meth or not, this can't continue. A person who believes something like that is in danger. And eventually they did take her back, you know, but it took a lot of doing. And also in one of her better times, we were in Whole Foods in the city. And there's some soda pop there, a big pyramid of cans of Hippie Pop, Hanson's, or whatever they have. And she said another time she was in that same store and she just took a can. The store is near the Tenderloin, and drank it because a voice was telling her, you know, don't worry, I got it. I'm paying for this. But of course, there wasn't any voice. It was all imaginary. And a security guard grabbed her and twisted her up and dragged her around and told her never to come back in the store. She was just at the mercy of this voice just behind a soda. And I know she's hearing voices now. I can't talk to her on the phone very effectively because there's these big pauses of like 5 or 10 seconds sometimes where she's listening to a bunch of things that I can't hear. So I understand now that she can't be blamed. It is not her fault. Whatever happens to her is not her fault, not because of her addiction and not because of her illness. She can't be blamed for doing what voices tell her to do. It doesn't make any sense to tell her to take responsibility for herself. That's not a concept. You know, it's not good for her health or anybody else to have her go out and take meth. It's like giving a drunk person the keys to an airplane. It's like giving someone with Alzheimer's a chance to go take a walk down the freeway. It's very difficult for me to deal with people in the bureaucracy who try to justify this to me. And it's become pretty ugly, actually, in my dealings with them. Although, as Katy says, being involved in activism makes it a little easier. It's difficult. They won't honor her HIPAA releases anymore. She's usually glad to sign them, but they quit honoring them, and the public guardian went to court and got Judge Siren to issue an order that all her HIPAA releases would be disregarded. And so nobody will tell me anything, nobody except Diana, and also things I can find out on my own. And basically, I believe this is, well, I don't know exactly what feelings to project on the system, but it's just really unpleasant to deal with them. Anyway, go ahead. I keep on fighting. I'm sad because she's not quite as well off as she used to be especially after this last episode. I think she got into some bad drugs the last month that she was out. She came back saying things that made me believe she'd been gang raped. She was complaining about pornographers and different things, which I won't go into detail about. And her head is just not right. And she's gotten damaged because I believe as part of the county's program for taking care of frequent flyers, which I understand Kate Jones is going to present to the Mental Health Advisory Board about, that they decided to give their pocketbooks a rest, maybe by letting her go out and take meth and see what happens. Since nobody will tell me what they're thinking or why they think this is a good idea, I don't know what to assume. I keep sending emails there's a technique called the oh shit letter, which I heard about long ago from Teresa Pasquini, which is if you think the bureaucracy is about to do something stupid, you write an email to the people in charge and all their bosses saying you're about to do something stupid and it's going to have bad consequences. And I've been reduced to doing that about every month or so. When I hear about the stuff that she's gone through, I copy the heads of Villa, of Gladman, of John George, of the Public Guardian's Office, of BHCS and HCSA, that the health and behavioral health agencies, and say, you're doing something stupid by letting her wander around taking meth. This is not going to end well. And that just seems to be what I can do for her nowadays, besides visit her a lot, which, I can't get in the building anymore. Villa's closed because of COVID. Bring her snacks and stuff. But it's ugly. Kate Jones, I don't know if you guys have ever sat through one of these. We had a listening session with Kate Jones where they told me that Olmsted the Olmsted decision doesn't allow people to be locked up. People can't be locked up just because they're homeless. That her conservator's boss actually said that she shouldn't be locked up like an animal. And that was unpleasant too. Anyway, it's a go ahead. Is somebody trying to ask a question?
I have a question. Alison, does your
Yeah.
daughter have insight? Does she know that she has a problem?
Not usually. At times on Clozaril, she said words like schizophrenia and schizoaffective. That was years ago. She hasn't said anything like that in the last few months. And she didn't say that in the beginning either. She said she had PTSD, or that meth had damaged her feet, or that there was some damage to something having to do with meth, or that she was mentally ill, or that some hospital she went to had removed it or fixed it, what it was. You can't say she has insight. She doesn't know why she's in Villa and not back at a board and care or any other place. No, she doesn't have insight.
So you said earlier she was diagnosed with schizoaffective. Do you see the mood disorder there in his behavior, in her behavior?
Not really. It's odd. I'd like to talk to somebody about this. I've tried to, but I don't think her main problem is the mood disorder. They give her pills to elevate her mood. If she's telling the truth, she's been taking gabapentin 3 times a day. They try to keep her happy, but that does not do anything for her delusions. I don't think her issue is mainly a mood disorder. Okay. But whatever it is, they haven't fixed it, and meth isn't good for it. And she's not aware right now of what it is. And I first got politically involved after talking to Bev Bergman. She told me that parents either give up or that they go talk to the politically active parents. And so I talked to Patricia and Candy, who Katy talked about, and I went and told them my issues. I was mad then at a lot of things that happened at Villa and John George. They're pretty sloppy, that made me think that they were trying to let her AWOL and trying to release her arbitrarily. And FASMI's 3 asks, which I'll show you in a minute, make a lot of sense to me. Our first ask is more psychiatric hospital beds, especially more subacute beds, more beds like Villa, because they've shown in so many ways that they need to turn people over at Villa. They need to get people out of there. The first time Diana was at Villa, the head social worker came up to me and said, remember, she can only stay here 5 months. I said, what are you talking to me about? Why 5 months? Why is that important? How do you know? But they've always made it clear that they need to turn that place over. They want to give telecare a bonus for discharging people earlier. That didn't pass recently. They said they didn't have enough money for that. But there is a shortage of beds. People are backing up in John George. And there are also so many people homeless and in jail that should have the chance to have their mental illness treated. They need more beds. And we also need more beds like Synergy. Now, Synergy, hasn't fixed everything in my life, but it's a place where Diana had a chance of doing well outside a locked facility. If you don't like locked facilities, and a lot of people don't even like the word locked facility, then there has to be some alternative. There has to be a safe place where people can be discharged to from Villa or Gladman or from jail, where there are people around all the time. There's activities. There's doctors and psychiatrists that are nearby that come over every day, where they keep an eye on you and see if you need, for example, to go to a psych emergency ward or something, whether you need help. That is like Synergy. That is a licensed group home with services, a board and care with services, an enhanced board and care. We need places like that to be in the spectrum of housing. And as it happens, there is money from the state. It's called BCHIP and CCE. If I remember what those acronyms stand for, I'll tell you in a minute. BCHIP and CCE. BCHIP is for mental hospitals and other mental health facilities. CCE is for licensed residences. That money could get us our two asks if we started now. There are deadlines this year for that money, this year and next for BCHIP. And we also need, our third ask is a continuum of care. The county needs to take on the responsibility of keeping our kids alive and not pass it on to, well, the FSP, well, John George, it was a weekend and they let him out. Well, she lost her phone. Well, we don't know where she is. That can't go on. That's not the way to keep somebody alive. And we're hoping that there will be a state right to treatment, maybe within a year or so. Newsom has been announcing something called the Care Court. In itself, it won't bring about a right to treatment, and it won't necessarily get people hospitalized. It's one of those black robe programs like assisted outpatient treatment and behavioral health court, where it's voluntary. A person who seems to be in trouble on the street or otherwise with serious mental illness will be given, a lot of attention and advice and support. But that program, the Care Court, will create a path potentially to conservatorship. And people in state government are working on the idea of amending the LPS law, the conservatorship law, to create a right to treatment. And that is something that everybody's been dreaming of for years, and I hope it happens. If people don't have questions right now, I'm going to try and show my slideshow. I think I'm going to embarrass myself. I'm sorry, because I've never really mastered this stuff. But let me show it and let me talk about the politics of serious mental illness. Let me see if I can get back to the top slide. So do you see something called politics of serious mental illness? Well, that's a start.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, here's our three asks. More psychiatric beds, acute and subacute, more permanent licensed supportive housing, and a consistent, unbroken continuum of care. Not a whole lot, I don't know. This small writing, just letting you know that it's complicated. I'm sorry. There are many levels of government that have gone astray and are looking for solutions to the problem that Governor Newsom perceives of all these seriously mentally ill people deteriorating on the street. Some issues are federal, some are state, some are county, some are local. The federal government funds research and sets the tone. There's actually an organization that talks about federal issues. It's mostly an organization interested in national issues called the National Shattering Silence Coalition, and they have a list, which is on their website, of federal issues, and it includes these. They would like schizophrenia reclassified as a brain disease and not mental illness. The head of SAMHSA, for example, the federal mental health agency, can set a tone. Actually, under Trump, the lady they had as head of that agency was really good. SAMHSA at present is actually not so good now. If by good, you mean being interested in the family point of view and realizing that there are some people that are too sick to be homeless or in jail on their own. There's a federal issue, which is the IMD exclusion, Institution for Mental Disease Exclusion, which is part of Medi-Cal. There is actually a federal bill that would repeal the IMD exclusion. If we could get enough senators and congressmen to endorse it, that would be good. National Shattering Silence Coalition is actively working on that. HIPAA, this law that's such a pain, the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, which keeps us from finding out what's going on. This is a federal law. The feds also fund California's Disability Rights Organization. Hey, keep it down, okay, Fred? Sorry. And the Department of Justice sues counties once in a while, saying that the jails are oppressing people with serious mental illness, which is true. Now, the state issues include the definition of who needs to be conserved. Every state has their own definition. Ours is the Lanterman-Petrus Short Act. People have been talking for years about reforming it. It could happen. Steinberg, the governor of Sacramento, is interested in creating a new act that would include a right to treatment. The state dispenses large quantities of money through the Mental Health Services Act. Since people have fixed it so it can't go to involuntary treatment, it has certain, shortcomings. It's not in itself, hasn't fixed serious mental illness. Recently, Governor Newsom has been putting out a whole lot of money intended to solve problems of homelessness and mental illness, including these two funding programs, BCHIP and CCE, which together add up to 3 billion. Behavioral health continuum infrastructure project and community care expansion. I think that's what it stands for. They also have the state hospitals like Napa. The county has the direct responsibility for the awful and good things that happen to our loved ones. They're also responsible for delivering Medi-Cal benefits, and they're responsible for jails and policing. And that seems to be their three big functions of county government. Cities end up dealing with our issues as a police matter. There's a disturbance, someone's creating a disturbance in public. Cities are also blamed for, why are all these homeless people here? There's more and more, they do strange things. It's concerning, it's scary, it's dangerous. The cities are blamed for what the county has not done. So there's a lot of interest involved. What's going on right now is that the county, we're hoping the county will apply. Well, we know they'll apply for this money, the BCHIP and CCE money. We just need to be sure they will apply for it to build a subacute hospital and an enhanced board and care. They're being vague about what they're going to apply for, and we're trying to find a way to pressure them through the supervisors to make it specific and commit themselves.
So to apply, they have to have a plan, right?
Well, it'd be nice,
Or do
wouldn't
we
it?
know the rule? Do we know what it
Yeah.
takes? It's almost
Yeah,
like a grant,
there's-
you have to say.
Yeah, the guidelines are on these websites. It's not terribly difficult. They offered some planning money, which the county did not accept because they said it wasn't really appropriate for a large county and would distract them from actually applying for something. The county has called, kind of broadcast this request to people who might want to run a mental health facility. I don't know that they've identified any partners or any sites for anything. I just know that they are going to apply. The furthest they've committed themselves is they're going to apply for something to be built with this money. They need to commit for a lot more than that.
Do you know when it's a deadline to apply? You said that?
Yeah.
Months?
There's a application period open now for CCE. You can apply by March 31st. If you miss that deadline, you can apply again on May 31st. You know, whoever applies first is more likely to get money, you know, but you can apply either time. There's also that same deadline, March 31st or May 31st, for what's called launch ready beachip projects. I mean, if you have a site identified for another Villa Fairmont, I don't think they do. Glenn Dyer seems to have fallen by the wayside. You need a site identified, you need an operator identified, you need to have to show that you can put together a budget and an architectural plan, and you need to show county support. And you need to have the county commit to keep the facility running for 30 years.
And it has to be in the county itself?
Yeah, I think if it's in some other county, the other county has to arrange to apply for it. Profits and nonprofits, you know, can apply for this money, but they have to link up with a county that will guarantee that if something falls through, it'll keep operating. They don't want to fund something that's going to be gone in a year or two. Also, countywide, there's something going on politically, which is care first, jails last. The old decarcerate Alameda folks had a lot of influence into this. It could end up doing something good. A similar committee in LA managed to shift a lot of money out of their jail and to, you know, stop construction of a so-called mental health jail and shift it to mental health services outside jail. And so what's happening now at the state, Newsom is, I'm very glad to see how he frames the problem. The news stories about what he wanted to do with this care court were so close to our point of view, I thought. You know, the family testimony in these news stories was so convincing. Now, the proposal itself that he's talking about, the care court, is kind of symbolic, I think. Since, like I said, the court can't compel anybody to do any particular thing. You know, it can't make people take meds. It can't keep people from disappearing. It can't make people stay here or there. You know, if they get housing, it can't guarantee they won't cause trouble and be thrown out of it. But eventually, it's a path to conservatorship. And he supports the idea of building more mental health infrastructure. Oh my gosh, I'm running out of gas already. He's very much in favor of building more mental health infrastructure. That's what this $3 billion is about. It's a once in a generation opportunity. And he supports this idea of a right to treatment. And finally, the IMD exclusion that's going on right now, but it's kind of stalled out in my opinion. I'm not really specializing in that except directing people to national shattering silence. And we go round and round about this. Who are our allies? It seems like people either know, they understand, or they don't understand. Once people know what serious mental illness is, if they have it in their family, then it's not hard for them to be allies. And people that work in the system, except those that are very cynical and burned out and stubborn, are our allies. I think we have allies that are both progressives and conservatives. I was on some committees for the National Shattering Silence Coalition, and there are some Trumpniks, you know, in this state and elsewhere that on our issues, you know, of what ought to be done about mental health are with us, you know. And progressives aren't automatically with us because some of them, there's kind of a bundle of interest in human rights, that the rights of people of color, the rights of people with disabilities, the rights of anybody disadvantaged are all bundled together, and that everybody should be able to speak up for their own rights, and that any speaker claiming to speak up for a group's own rights should be honored. If that makes sense, and it probably doesn't, but there is a tendency in the progressive movement to say, well, here's some disability rights activists, they speak for the disabled, you know, nobody else needs to. And that causes trouble. I think we have potential allies in Decarcerate, in the Anti-Police Terror Project, in many groups that want to find something different, to want to find different solutions to the mental health problems. We're not always on the same page, but I think a lot of them are starting to understand the problem. Police, in fact, have been our allies. There's some good police in Fremont. There's national groups like the Treatment Advocacy Center, the National Shattering Silence Coalition. We used to have Mental Illness Policy Org, which was one guy, the late DJ Jaffe. And there's people in academia. This RAND report that I just finally read the whole thing is great. It's saying we need twice as many beds. Okay, who's against us? Well, anybody that doesn't understand what SMI is, they're not going to understand. That is why our personal stories are so important. People seem to find them very persuasive, although it's getting very hard to tell mine over and over again. Disability Rights California is powerful in Sacramento, and it often weakens legislation. You know, there'll be a good bill by people who agree with the family point of view, you know, expanding the definition of grave disability or making conservatorship a little easier, something of that nature. After a few committee meetings where disability rights people talk, you know, these bills tend to get watered down. They're not on the same page as us. There's a lot of statewide lobbying organizations of like mental health employees, mental health directors. These people aren't necessarily on our side at all. There's a lot of inertia. A lot of them heard a few years ago, I think, that this whole issue was settled, that we weren't going to hospitalize people involuntarily. That is bad. That, you know, everybody that can be needs to be out of a hospital. And they don't like this whole can of worms stirred up again, possibly because it could be expensive, possibly because they'll take flack for it. It's controversial. But in any case, they are not crusading for us. And as much as they're crusading, they're generally crusading against us. The Association of Behavioral Health Directors didn't like BCHIP and CCE when they first came out. They said, this is a car without gas. There's no money for staffing here. You know, we're not interested. We're not going to do it. Well, that's tough. What else we got here? Oh, this is hard. Sometimes I feel rhetorically very strange begging the head of behavioral health to do this or that when the whole system has lost credibility, the whole county system, with me by doing the perverse and stupid things they do without having an explanation. So sometimes it's very hard to address myself to behavioral health, and that's one reason, another reason for going over their heads. I don't think it'll hurt my loved one, quite the opposite. The more public I am, you know, and the more, you know, I speak out, I think the safer she is. Then there's the extremely technical nature of this field. All of us who've like been to graduate school or been to competitive offices or crap like that, you know, we've all shown off. Maybe I should speak for myself, you know, learning all these technical terms and making all these compilations of written information and, you know, hogging the stage and coming up with all these ideas. It can be alienating as well as empowering. After a while, nobody but you knows what you're talking about. It's difficult.
Yeah.
Another problem is that so many people over the years have proposed solutions for mental illness without really knowing mental illness or what could go wrong in our specific cases. I think a lot of our family members are different and need different things. It's not possible to say, well, just get rid of, the institutions are bad, the asylums are bad, get rid of the asylums. And then everybody's out of the asylums and new problems were created by that. It's possible the same thing could happen with jails. They might say, well, let's get rid of the jail. Let's get everybody out of jail. It doesn't belong there. And they may have no place to go. It's possible that if we get rid of all the police dealing with mental health, I don't think that's even possible because most of the calls that police show up to where somebody ends up getting killed aren't construed as mental health calls. They're understood as being some kind of violence or robbery or threat or something. And yeah, like Katy said, we need a multiracial movement, a diverse movement, or we won't have much credibility. And we need to learn ways of doing things to be able to do that.
Yep.
I'm learning, I'm trying. So what you can do, tell your story. I would get it down to various lengths. Mine's gotten completely out of hand. It's book length now, I'm thinking. A lot of people have written books or movies just to show what's going on with their loved one. And there's compilations of these stories. The stories are what are convincing people. I think going to elected officials with a lot of acronyms is easier, but it's not as convincing as showing in particular what you need done and why. You should know who your supervisor is. By the way, I suspect a lot of you are constituents of Valle or Halbert. If you are, and if you would like to go to a meeting with them in the next week or two or with their staff and talk to them about the need to build more facilities and the need to have a right to treatment or about whatever your family needs, please put your contact information in the chat or send it to Armine, because I'd like to introduce you to your supervisor and their staffer. There are reasons why this is a good thing to know also, because sometimes they can help you find out something, some mystery of the system. At times, someone on Carson's staff has been able to find out whether Diana had a record, whether there was a bench warrant out for her or different things, or whether something worked the way it should or not, or whether a certain document existed or not. They might be able to help you. So it's good to know who they are. And it's good to know who your other elected officials are, because one of these days we'll get them to do the right thing. And that's all.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you. Thank you very much. I feel humbled and honored, to be honest with you. I've worked last several months with both Alison and Katy, and I knew of their families and loved ones, but I never heard the story like this. I just feel much closer and totally humbled. Thank you, Alison, for all those times you basically hold my hand, because I've been going through a lot last several months. So wow. I just want to tell you folks that I do get the emails from FASMI, and I find it educational, lots of discussions. Sometimes it's even a lot, but I never complain because I'm always learning something. And I love her calendar. Alison, your calendar is awesome. Always tells us what's going on. I know we're all busy. We never know what we're going to need when. So any questions? I'm going to stop here and let the people start a discussion. You have a question, comments. It doesn't have to be just a question. I had to start by thanking the ladies. So go ahead, Joyce.
Hi, Armine, you had mentioned you get a newsletter from FASMI?
It's not a newsletter as much as the group discussion. And then maybe Alison, you can put the information up to say where they can reach out. It's a Google group discussion. It's a FASMI discussion group.
Joyce, just put your email in the chat and we'll copy it down and put you on the list if you'd like.
Okay.
Any questions from anyone? Go ahead, Laura. You're muted.
I just, I mean, I guess everybody probably knows Gavin Newsom is running for president, and he's probably trying to clean up the homeless situation in California to look better. But I was feeling cautiously optimistic when I heard his plans. But I don't have as much skin in the game as you ladies. Do you think, Allison and Katie, that that
You went mute again.
sorry, do you think, are you thinking that perhaps what he has been saying might turn out to be something positive?
Yes, yes, absolutely. And we have to tell him that it can turn out to be something positive. I gotta believe it. You know, it's a very carefully crafted proposal, the care court. It doesn't actually infringe on, you know, you can't say they're locking people up. It can't, it's no direct offense to, you know, the sensibilities of anybody, but he's on the right track and he's saying the right things.
I
And
think we're-
Is there a way we could support? I mean, I get a fundraising email from him like every 15 or 20 minutes. Because I've supported him since, well, when he was mayor, actually, in San Francisco. But is there a way that you guys are supporting him in your groups, moving ahead and really feeding him like this is the right direction to go? And families would be very appreciative if this, you know, if you could enact this.
Yeah, I'll take a
Yeah.
stab at that, and then Allison, you can, yeah, yes, absolutely. And I think there's a couple of ways. Write him, congratulate him, say thank you.
That's a good idea.
But I think on a more local county level, we need to be involved in it starting now. We need to make our voices heard that, yes, we want this. Yes, these are the facilities we need. There's going to be opposition. I mean, if you're reading the articles on it, watching the news on it, there's already opposition from people that are saying, no, this is going to strip people of their rights and nobody should have to go into any sort of treatment. There's going to be that type of opposition. So yes, we're already trying to meet. That's when Allison asked you if you'd like to be part of meeting with your board of supervisors. We're starting that process now, and we're trying to look to allies to come together in support of this. Because it could easily just go, yeah.
Exactly. Exactly.
May I
That's
say
my
something?
fear, that there's like an initial woo woo and then just all peters out.
May I say something on behalf of NAMI Tri-Valley? That is our role as well. If we wish it to be our role, to either be a collaborative, supportive entity. And so I want you to keep that in mind. And the fact that we do support families with the idea of, with families being supported, they can better support the person they love that's living with a mental illness. However, you know, I'd say power in numbers, and this is not all NAMIs will do this, but that's been a focus of ours since day one. And it's only now with the advent of the group that you've gathered that we have, you know, I guess like experiences, like frustrations, and you know, targeted at a more local area, which would be East County, and our issues that we need to deal with specifically out here, but it's universal on the other hand. So you know, we can also, I believe, contribute however that looks. I appreciate you both being here. Thank you.
And
Yes,
you can
very
be
much.
hearing from us, Marcia.
Yes, go ahead.
If you want to
Allison,
help, give me your email address or email me. And we will find something for you to do.
Okay.
So Alison, will you be able to share your slides? There's a lot of information that I like the way you put it together, the chronological thinking through the process. And I actually would like to know more about CCE and BCHIP. It's interesting how they're, who's working on those, which organization in county, which group?
Behavioral health is working on BCHIP and something called the Office of Homeless Care and Coordination on CCE. They're both part of HCSA under Colleen Shawla.
Okay. So they have a whole group that gets paid, that works in this, applies, they're filling out the application, right? For Alameda County.
Yeah, James Wagner put his name on this thing looking for partners, this request for solicitations or whatever it was called. He's in behavioral health. I think he would be very likely to know what's going on with either BCHIP or CCE. But again, it's better to lobby, I think, elected officials and have them. Well, you got to go both ways. You got to go to both
Sure.
elected officials and bureaucrats. Otherwise, they'll just say, well, if you talk to the bureaucrats yet, if you talk to elected officials yet, just go around.
Yeah. Interesting.
Can I ask what BCHIP is?
Behavioral Health Continuum Infrastructure Program.
Okay.
I can drop a link in the chat.
Yeah.
Well, that would be great.
Continue. Wow.
Hi, I'm from San Francisco, and I joined FASMI because I felt that it's all the same thing, and there was not a very strong group in San Francisco. Now there is some movement, there is a better group in San Francisco, and we are thinking of doing something when we discovered that the head of the behavioral health came to a meeting with Treatment on Demand and surprisingly said, oh, I did not know that we're going to talk about serious mental illness. And she is the one who is in charge of this. So our job now in San Francisco, the way we see it, is that we have to educate her about that. This is also part of behavioral health, the serious mental illness. And we sent her letters. We wanted to meet with her. She refused. She said, it's not refused, she just did not answer. So we are thinking of actually going back there and even having a little demonstration in front of her office, telling her about serious mental illness. And this is where we can push to educate and to say we are here. This is one way. Another thing is that I have one person in my group in San Francisco who really knows what's happening with legislation in Sacramento. And he says that it's really not in the county, it's really happening in Sacramento. It's the legislation, like now with what's happening with Gavin Newsom. So that's another place where we need to start thinking of how to bring it to Sacramento.
Yep.
And so we can be seen, we can be heard, and just keep pushing till I think that's how it's going to be eventually.
Yeah, I wish there was a statewide group that would put pressure on Sacramento. It's just a weak association. Yeah.
We could actually, I think we're moving more and more in that direction. Some of us are part of a statewide email group called Cal Advocates, which is a bunch of unbelievable state nerds that have loved ones with serious mental illness. They just, like Alison does at this meeting, they do on a statewide level. And I think there's a means for us to to coordinate statewide. We haven't gotten to that point yet, but with NARIT and FASMI, and we have people from San Mateo. I mean, there are people in it that are in surrounding counties. And I mean, at some point we need to be coordinating.
Yeah, ideally, all 9 or 10 Bay Area counties would get together and say, where is our subacute hospital? You know, we need 3 or 4 more. Then they couldn't play us off against each other. There are beds that we could use at Villa, but they sell them to other counties. Every time they want to spend a little less money on mental health, they let another one of these beds go to another county. And
So
that
I've
should,
just been through the circle myself, and my son was in Villa Fairmont for 4 months, and he was in the hospital 1 month. This last experience was the longest he was locked up, almost over 4 months. And now he's in Bonita House, and our first experience, by the way, in Bonita House. And Villa Fairmont, I was totally disappointed. So we got in there, and at the tail, obviously it was all COVID, and the tail end, there was a COVID case in there. So I did not see my son for a month and a half. And I don't know if they opened up. Alison, you were saying they're not, right? They're still closed.
yeah, you can't visit there. They're not going on passes.
Uh,
They're
and it's
accepting
very-
new patients finally.
So let me tell you what's happening. I thought when my son was in Villa Fairmont, he will get treatment. And I'm not saying anything, I'm not trying to be negative. I'm just trying to understand, right? What is the treatment he needs? There were no therapy. There were no one-on-one. Nobody was talking to him.
Yeah, there's no talk
What?
therapy.
There is no talk. And they give him medication, and there's groups. You can go if you want, you don't. And he knows they're watching him, and they're letting him out when they think he's, and he says, I talked to the doctor and says, what do I need to do to get out? The doctor said that you need to accept that you have an illness. And he says, I accept, let me go. And, and he's smart like everyone
Yeah.
else, right? But in SMI, we got a lot of very smart people there. And even if they don't think right, they're very smart. All our loved ones we know. Anyways, he's like, I said, do you have a conversation? He says, Mom, every time I tell him something, he says, what do you think? And what do you think? He gets so mad. It's very annoying. He gets no
Yeah.
conversation.
Some of those people are burned out there.
I talked to the social worker and I said, no one's talking to him. He's so isolated. If it wasn't me talking to him, I don't know, it would be worse. And not that I can help him anyways. So it was an interesting experience. I think Bonita House is doing much better. He's actually within a month, first month, and I don't mean to share or take over with my story, but last month he's been taking a class called Best Now Certification for Peer Counseling. And even though he was in Bonita House taking their classes from 9 to 2:30, he went on, he was accepted. So we all were nervous, hey, he's too much. But he wants to work, he's eager to work. And in a hospital, he was told the condition was schizoaffective all along. I don't know. That's why I asked questions about the diagnosis. And the doctor in Villa Fairmont said that he's bipolar. And he said, I want you to accept that you have a bipolar disorder, or they don't call it a disorder, it's bipolar condition. Anyways, now he's in Bonita House, and I just spoke with the therapist. She said, well, your son has schizoaffective bipolar type, and they're going to keep that name. And I'm just trying to understand, I suppose that's why I'm curious, but I see the mood swings and mood disorder more so than, but he's got this grandiose thinking. So
If he's been at Bonita House a month, that is so wonderful. I shouldn't laugh.
Right. No, he hasn't been there a month, but I'm hoping he can stay there. It's almost a month. Yeah. 3-4 weeks almost. Yeah. 4 weeks. And I'm hoping he stays there longer. I told him, I said, you want to be a peer counselor? You're going to first learn how to take care of yourself because you're going to have to teach. We're working on that. Not easy, but I don't know. The dual diagnosis doesn't help. Just to add all the asks and frustration, there's a whole new phenomenon if there's drugs involved, and they're saying that the government, they don't want to help out. It's a drug addiction. This is not mental illness. At some point, you can't separate. And for him, we're applying for disability for him and rejected twice. I'm working with an attorney. and there's a hearing that's keep being delayed. That's another whole problem. And the only reason I started doing that is because he needs those benefits. He needs a lot of help. And thanks, Marcia. Thanks, everyone. I know a lot of the people here have been basically my support group. We couldn't have done it. And people think I'm strong. It's people like you, Alison and Katy. My gosh, I remember when Katy came and we sat down to do that application. Katy, you're a lifesaver.
Yep, Katie's a lifesaver.
If you're helping anyone that needs help and you need extra arms and legs, NAMI's backing you all the way. Thank you for introducing Zohranova. Pronounce your name again. I want to say it right. Zohranova. You're muted.
Yeah, I have to say thanks to all of you, especially Alison and Katy. Katy introduced me to this program, and I'm really blessed that I'm here right now and listening to all these important information.
You are not alone.
Program and to everything that I'm experiencing right now, but thank you so much, Katy. I cannot enough appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Can I throw something in here that I didn't include in what I wanted to say, but it really needs to be said, is that the county needs more family advocates embedded in the case management teams. Because and I see Lee Ferks going, Armene and Zoranawi. I call you Zora. I don't know if that's right.
Yeah,
okay.
That's right, Zora.
Okay. If you've got families that are involved with their kids and you're working with them, they do the work. Armene does the work. Zora does the work. It's just like you go, oh, why don't we move in that direction or this, or connect you to things. It just is so helpful when families are respected, and we're just not respected enough. We're tossed, oh, you're too much of a problem. We'll handle this. You go away. And
yeah, there's a flavor of that.
Wow. It's an incredible journey. I've been listening and attending meetings, hearing stories. It's a very difficult problem at any age. Okay, I've personally been involved with this now 7-8 years, and my biggest concern is, like, as he ages now, first my goal was to keep him alive until 30-35, and then you go, oh my gosh, he's been in a shelter, and my son told me personally, no one here after 45 has teeth. And I never looked at that way. He's afraid of taking medication is because when he gets old, he's going to have all kinds of problems. And I'm trying to explain to him that the drugs he did, because he didn't think the drugs were hurting him, the drugs that he's doing is what's causing that condition. He needs to take medication. He says, Mom, he's 27. All my 20s, I've taken medication. I don't want to do this. He's afraid. It's the fear. And now at least somebody in Bonita House is talking to him, right? No one was before talking to him outside of Mom. And Mom says somehow, no matter what we say is wrong. We try, but no. So my personal thing is to learn from all the experts, hearing the stories. It was very powerful. Thank you. Okay. Well, share the information going forward. Anything that FASMI wants to tell our people, we'll be more than happy to share. Anybody who's interested in getting on FASMI, this is a great way to network. We want these meetings to be also networking opportunity outside of education. So if anybody's interested in certain type of guests to bring forward, we're here, we're listening. So call me. You got my number on a flyer. Now it's gone public. So, and I try to answer all the phones. I've learned that from Marcia. You never know who's going to call. So any other questions, comments?
I have a really quick question.
That's good.
Yeah, this is great. I just want to thank everyone for sharing. It's You're an amazing group. I just wondered if the recording will be shared with us.
Yes, we do record, and we keep the recording on our website. Terry, I see your email, your phone number. Where are you located, if I may ask, physically?
I'm in Fremont, Alameda.
Fremont.
Actually, NAMI Tri-Valley has a YouTube channel, and this will be posted on YouTube.
Oh, wow.
Do you want to
Okay.
type the YouTube channel information, Lois, right at the bottom corner? So this way she can go. All our past, well, I shouldn't say all. Recently, we started recording, so there's several recordings there, I believe. Very good one when we have a doctor, Dr. Kostelnik. We're still trying to get him this year. Really great discussion. And all the moms like me would dive into the medication and anything, any questions you can ask. So hopefully we'll get him this year. Even in our YouTube channel, we listed the ad, right, for the event, the GM. Lois, did we put it on YouTube? YouTube is only the recordings, right? We have the Facebook, the YouTube. You're muted, that's why we couldn't hear you. Lois, you're muted.
I just want to say, we have one of our original FASMI members is sitting there, DI, keeping very quiet. I just told her on text I was going to out her.
Who could that be?
Who is it?
Diane.
Oh, it's Diane. Okay.
Hey, Diane.
Feel free to come out of hiding, Diane. Say something. Now you're on the spot.
She's taking a rest.
Yeah.
It's hard work doing what we do.
Good group, and I do want to take this opportunity to really compliment this last efforts that the I don't want to say march, but what did you call it, Katy, in Oakland, where we went?
Protest.
I know the word was
Sleep
Sleep
in.
in.
protest. Now, I'll be honest with you, I missed it during the day because I had to go see my son, and I hadn't seen him for a while, and he was desperate. And that was in Berkeley. So on the way back, I stopped by, and in the evening, where it was getting darker, on the wall, they had the pictures. And now I feel bad, but Katy asked me to put my son's picture. There were all kinds of pictures, some baby pictures, so they won't recognize. I was going through a very rough patch personally with my son's situation at the time, but it worked out beautifully. All the parents got together. It's such a healing experience. I think we need to do these kinds of things. It also helps us, gets the message out. But that evening, it was very touching. Peggy was there. Peggy Rahman told her story. A lot of people with the pictures are out there, and it was very touching. So
Yeah.
good work, not only for the results, but healing as well.
Yeah. Daphne has her hand up.
Hi there, I'm Daphne. I have a 28-year-old son at Fremont who's been conserved. And thank you for you guys for inviting me to your meeting. My question is, the hospital seems very understaffed, and they have been under COVID restrictions for over 2 weeks, and now they're lifted, but now they don't have staff, and he's been there a little over 3 weeks, and now he's on a wait list for Villa, and sounds like maybe they're understaffed too. My question is, who in the hospital can I turn to without having negative repercussions to beg, take them outside for some fresh air? Is that so hard to ask?
You don't have any repercussions. You can beg. You can beg.
Excuse me,
Yeah.
is Fremont,
To whom? They just, the
is
casework,
Fremont a jail?
No, it's a hospital. But
It's
he calls it
Fremont
a jail.
Hospital.
Oh, I see.
Fremont Hospital. is-
Daphna, I called the CEO. Call her. Call her.
Okay.
I mean, she's like I don't want to cast any negative impression over Fremont Hospital, but it is for profit. And I had a hard time with them too. But
Yeah.
call the CEO. She's pretty understanding.
Okay, I mean, we keep thinking any minute now he's gonna get to the bed, but if he goes to Villa, this sounds almost as bad. But maybe he'll be able to go outside.
Definitely he will.
He
There's
will
fresh
be.
air at
He
Villa.
will be.
There's a lot of light.
Well, but there was fresh air at Fremont until they said there was someone that had COVID on the unit, and the 10 days turned into 14 days. And like, they think that we're not paying attention. He's been there over 3 weeks, and he's gone outside like once when he got there, and I think for 10 minutes maybe yesterday. So over 2.5 weeks of no fresh air.
My son's been in, no, it's not good. My son's been in Herrick for, well, going on 6 months minus 3 weeks for bad behavior when he got a writ hearing, went right back in. And there is no fresh air at Herrick. They have no place for them to go outside. And yet it is probably,
Hey,
Thank you.
no, it's wrong, but it's at the same time, Herrick is probably the best hospital in the county. And I'm grateful that he's there, but I totally understand. I mean,
yeah.
when we call for more beds, we have to call for good beds, not just any old bed. But yeah, you're absolutely right.
Completely. And the nurses will say something to every time I ask, they're like, oh yeah, it's so sad. Yeah, that's too bad. Yeah.
Yeah.
So all of us have gone through that experience. We know it's difficult taking care of SMI, right? And then COVID didn't help at all, because if they're in a hospital, it's not easy anywhere. We all have our stories with that. We have to be strong. So I just wanted to say something. A lot of time we can take our personal stories to the support groups. NAMI has a support group Monday evenings, so feel free. I know Katy also runs some of them. We have it every month. So is it every week or every month? I think my guys can help me. Where's Marcia? I think I lost Marcia. So
twice a month on Mondays at 7 p.m. It's every second and fourth Monday.
Second and fourth Monday.
I'm back.
Right. Thanks. I was just telling Marcia that people, especially if we have going through tough patches, they should always be comfortable to go to our support groups every second and fourth Monday, right? So it's every other week, because the other weeks are the other support group for young children or young adults, families with children. I'll let Marcia say that, in that with that note, I can conclude unless there's other ones to have say something.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Katy. Thank you, Alison. And the recording will be in the YouTube. So feel free to contact us any further questions.
Yeah,
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.